So I'm here today to talk about how to rethink life. I'm a writer, and for my first 4 books, I decided to make them as available as possible. People can download them for free. We have it in several languages. People can use it as they wish in their companies, in their colleges. But for my 5th book, I wanted to do something different. I decided to give a gift to myself. I turned 30, and I decided to write a biography that only I could read. And my whole point was that I wanted to be able to deconstruct my life. I didn't want to be worried about pleasing people or trying to explain things so that people would understand it. I needed a permission to dissect everything I had lived through and find my innermost truth. And what I'm going to share with you today is some of the things that it took me 30 years to realize. And some may be quite simple, but they were guiding my life. So I hope you're going to have to resonate some things with your life as well. When I was a small kid, my biggest gift, my biggest treasure was that I was very good in mathematics. So everyone was so amazed when that little kid would come in and would be so good with numbers. But I've always loved many other things as well. I loved advertising, I loved people, I loved teaching over anything else. And then I had those friends that didn't necessarily go well in math, and it was so interesting because they felt like they didn't fit, because somehow we have this hierarchy of intelligences, right? Which is just in people's mind, but people will value logical, mathematical intelligence more than other types of intelligence. So I would see my friends suffering, some of the most brilliant people I've had in my life, like my sister, and I would think, whoa, I'm so lucky I'm good in math, because that way I feel like I belong, that way I don't have to worry about this. But is it really a treasure to be good in what people values most? Or is it a prison? Because it turns out that even though I liked advertisement and people and all these other things, it didn't even cross my mind that I could become a teacher, or that I could become a psychologist, or that I could become an advertiser. I've always thought that I had to do engineering. And in the end, 30 years after, I do a mix of all these things. But I realized that for many, many years, I was guiding my decisions much more based on what people were valuing than what I was valuing. Here's the second thing. Thank you. I want to talk to you about references. So I love finding inspiring people. I mean, TED is all about it, and I love when people inspire me. I love when people come to me and they want to tell me what to do, and they want to give me some feedback. I love it. And when I was a small kid, and even until today, my biggest idol was Walt Disney. Like, I think it's amazing what he created. But here's the danger. Even though, of course, it serves me well to use him as my motivation, to use him as my inspiration, when people become big legends, many times they become big myths. And many times the things you're hearing about is just really an idea. It's not a person anymore, right? So, I mean, Walt Disney, well, he died before I was born. I never got to meet him in person. I don't know what he used to think every day or how he used to feel in his heart every day. I'll never get to know, right? There's no problem about that. The problem is when we start comparing legendary references to people we interact with, and we get upset that these people are not like them. That's the problem. So I had this big dream since I was a kid to do a company with thousands and thousands of employees and to do an IPO. But then I would look in my house, and my dad is this amazing guy who worked really hard, but he worked in a multinational. He wasn't an entrepreneur or a business guy. So I realized that I had these very distorted ways of thinking of success and happiness because I was expecting unreal things. As life would show you some irony, after doing many of my dreams, after going to MIT, that was my dream, after working with some of my bigger idols, after getting mentors that were the people I most wanted to meet, I was able to see from very close the good, the bad, the ugly, and how everything is just real. There is no legendary references. There's no such thing. And after everything I lived in my life, I decided that I wanted my sister as a co-founder, and we wanted to hire my dad. So it's so funny how sometimes the success and happiness is just right next to you, but you're distorting success and happiness for some crazy thing you have in your mind. Now let's talk about change. Change is really hard, we all know it. But you know what makes it even harder? that we're always waiting for a big story that will validate our change. So if we go for a big tragedy, or if we go to a big miracle, then it's fine. Then that's okay. The person is not a crazy person just changing. That's okay. The person can change because that person went through something so big, so transformative. It's great if you got to go through some transformative situation, but I think it's so complicated. If one day you just get up and want to be better, you don't need to look for a story of validation. If you're a big, big businessman and you're tough, because you've always thought that you need to be tough and you need to be serious, and one day you say, you know, it's enough. It's been accumulating my whole life. I want to be more soft. I want to laugh more. I want to be less serious. Then people don't do it. You know why? Because they keep thinking, but people are going to think I'm worse then because I need to keep these masks on, or their eyes, they're going to connect that I used to be big because of this and now I'm not big. So they think too much. So forget keeping the masks on. If you've got to a conclusion that you need to change and it's time to change, just change. Don't wait for the beautiful story that will finally give you permission to change. Here's something interesting about my life. I've always been very proud to be thinking so fast in my mind, like I've been always a very crazy, present, mental person, right? That I'm thinking. But the mind creates their own truths that many times are a little messed up. For example, I've always wanted to believe, and I always preach it to the whole world, that we are completely responsible for what we do with our lives. Like, we are total protagonists of our lives. I think I'm one of the biggest advocates of this idea. But in order to be an advocate of that idea, I needed to live it myself. And in order to live it myself, every time something super small would show me that it's not really like that. There are some points in your life that is not 100% up to you. I would try to find a story that, no, it was me. It was my responsibility that did this crazy thing that is not my responsibility. So I had this panic of turning into a victim. And what's the problem with that? Is that, let's say something simple, like a broken relationship. So I didn't get along with someone, there's a broken relationship. It takes two people to have a broken relationship. But every time I would have a broken relationship, I would think it's 100% my fault. And I wanted to go back and I wanted to think, what did I do? So even though it's great to be self-aware and to be self-responsible, sometimes it can be a crazy thing that just turns into a bigger victim, right? I had this inability to see the dark side of people. And I mean, when I say dark here, I don't mean that people deliberately plan something bad. I just mean that unconsciously, some people have some mechanism. Like some people may be a bit manipulative to get what they want, to get their agendas. And they don't even notice. It's just the way they play the game, the way they see life. But if you don't see this, then it's even easier for people to play with it and you become a bigger victim. And very aligned with that, like I have this ability to see a good side of everything. And I've always found this is amazing. I mean, it's great. I can see the bright things in everywhere. But this brought me what I believe is the biggest challenge of my life, which is the inability to have hard conversations. Because every single time that I realize, okay, this is not that fair, we need to sit down and we need to talk, I sit down and I have this objective of being completely transparent of what I'm not happy with, but then I can only talk about the things that I'm happy with. So I'm there to try to change something, and I end up saying I'm so grateful for some things. And that doesn't work. So this is still my biggest challenge in life. I'm still working on it, but I realized that the worst side effect of being able to see a very colorful life is the inability to have hard conversations. And this is true with everything. Every amazing skill, every amazing intention will always bring a side effect to it. Even a simple thing, like I'm very intense. Every time for me, the only thing I think about is where I am right now, is with whom I am right now. This sounds great. I'm totally devoted to today. But that means that if today is an amazing day, a day that I spend with 10 people, the next day I'm with 10 other people, and then I completely disappear. So there is always the side effects. So what do? Do you try to have perfect skills? No, you try to be aware of the side effects and pick the skills that are true to yourself instead of just trying to please people, because any skill will have a side effect. This is an important one, and this took me a long time to learn. Fascination with stories. We're all fascinated with stories. And not only authors, journalists, writers, people who actually work with fiction, but all of us. When you post a picture on Instagram and you write a caption to the picture, we're all storytelling. We're all story making. And here's what happens. we're constantly editing, cutting out pieces, putting things together, even unconsciously, because like I have a company that I started 6 years ago. If I have 10 minutes to talk about it, there's just so much that I can fit. I cut, I edit, I put some things later on. And here's the danger. Usually, you're responding to how people resonate with the story you told them. So for example, 7 years ago, I decided to launch my first book, and I'm a computer scientist, so I didn't have any strategy to sell the books. I was living in Silicon Valley, social media was growing. I had this idea that by the time no one had it, which was to do a full ebook, completely free, very nicely done, and put it for free on the web. This went completely viral in Brazil, millions and millions and millions of downloads. It was a big success. And since the beginning, since when I started working on it, I knew it would be a big success. It was the first time someone was doing it. I had poured my heart into it. Like, there was nothing else that I was selling, so it was purely free. And even the way I sold the project to everyone who would participate voluntarily, it made it become bigger because they saw how much I believed in it. So since the beginning, I was saying to people, it's going to be more than 1 million downloads, you see. And those numbers for 2011 were insane, right? Anyways, when I started telling my story, because I started giving a lot of talks, I realized that, and this is unconsciously, now I know, but I would sound too arrogant if I would tell people I knew from the beginning that I would get 1 million downloads. So somehow I cut that off, and I would do these cute things of saying, you know, I put the link in my website, and then I went back to my life, which is true, and then when I went to check the counter, I couldn't believe there was like 100,000 downloads. It's much more than I ever expected. Maybe my mom spent just a whole week clicking, maybe that's it. So I used to tell those things, and yeah, people would laugh. It would resonate, but you know what? It's not true. I knew there would be millions of downloads, and not I knew, I felt it could be bigger than that. My mom did not even click once, but sometimes we edit to belong. We edit to make sure that we can belong. And you know, people do it unconsciously. I'm not even saying about overvaluing or only devalue, because I think in the end, things even out. I think the biggest danger in belittling to belong is that when you belittle to belong, what happens is that you also belittle everyone that helps you along the way. And this is super dangerous, because you may be doing that unconsciously, but for them, it may be a total wrong way of getting gratitude to them. And the second danger is mixing up stories. Like, I've always thought that, look, I'm very strong, I'm almost a robot, so I can take everything. I'm like a robot, okay? So I'm never gonna be traumatic about anything. So I had this big dream of like working with some people, and I would always do the same way, like I knock on their door, I talk about my dreams, and of course they like it because I have this shine in my eyes. So every time it worked well, until once I did it, the person liked it. We started, like I was part of a founding team with that person, but I had these crazy expectations. Like I was 22, I thought we would be 24/7 doing the company. This person was older, more successful, had done many other companies, had sold so many companies. It was at a different stage of his life. So I'm not blaming that my expectations weren't met, but the thing is that 3 years later, when I had another company in Brazil, I realized when the story was completely changed because some younger guy knocked on my door, that I had this very big hole to fill, because everything that I didn't get from the previous relationship, I wanted to do to this new guy. So this guy traveled the whole world with me. I was there 24 hours for him. And by the way, he's an amazing guy. He became my co-founder. But when you mix up stories, this is messed up. Like every story is a different story. If something was weird or not exactly how you expected, okay, make peace with that and then start blank. Because if you mix up stories, you can end up getting gratitude and empathy really wrong. And now I'm gonna go through some quick fiery things that all go together, and this took me a long while to realize as well. The only way to really have control is to surrender. Because the only way you can think you're having control is in your mind, but your mind creates their own illusions. And they think they're having control. They create distractions, they create all these things so you believe you're in control. But the only way to really be a protagonist is if you become a witness, is if you accept things that may happen, but at least whatever that happens, you use the biggest freedom you have, which is you decide what is the meaning that that thing has. This is the most fundamental freedom that we have, and for me it's the most beautiful freedom that we have. And for me, the only way to really be a good strategist is the person that can let serendipity happen. Because if you are a big strategist, you're going to look at the resources you have. You're going to look at the puzzle that is possible right now. If you let serendipity happen, along with strategy, you may be able to find pieces that you didn't even imagine. You may be able to see that even the strategic puzzle was just part of a much, much bigger puzzle. And there's even a way to be persistent by destroying when needed. Let me explain it better. Of course, all the people who are go-getters, they want to persist. But sometimes the fire of passion blinds them. Because when we are too passionate, we try doing more things. We're going to make some mistakes along the way, but we convince ourselves that the mistakes are not mistakes. I need to try it again. But mistake is data. If you made a mistake, great, change it a little bit. Also because the only way to really unlock part of a new potential is to create a blank canvas. The only thing with full potential is a complete blank canvas. So the more things you put on top of the things you want to do, the less potential you have. So sometimes you can use fire to build it, not only to destroy. One last thing I want to share with you. I always thought that if we get something that is a big gift, we only get one chance to turn that gift into an achievement. So I told you in the beginning, the big gift was mathematics, even in the eyes of everyone. And then I had this big dream of going to MIT. There are some steps that I can take from being good in mathematics as a small kid to being to MIT. And people that are good strategists, they will say, okay, so maybe you can do an exchange program earlier on so you can know how the US works. Maybe you can go to an American high school so you can already prepare for the exams. You want to make sure that your parents understand that you're going to leave home soon, because that's not that normal in Brazil. And maybe you can go to a special training so you become the best mathematician before. Maybe you can get gold medals on the way. That's maybe the best strategy, right? So it turns out that I did it all the opposite. All the opposite. My parents, they expected me to live with them and then get married and then buy the house next door, and I couldn't really change that idea until I was 18. I went to a Brazilian high school. I didn't even know how to apply to MIT until a couple of months before. And even on the math side, my parents wanted me to be well-rounded. They wanted me to live life. So I ended up doing exactly the path that I could do. And in the end, I got in as well, because it was my story. And what's yours, it's really yours. You don't need to worry about trying to be someone else to get it. So to end this, when I think about rethinking my life, I want to invite you to write also a biography of your life just to yourself. Because the biggest lesson of it all is that we're always sculptors, but sculptors of ourselves. But it turns out that we have a masterpiece inside us. But if we let expectations from other people and opinions from other people cloud up our minds, then we don't get to see their masterpiece. It's never going to be a masterpiece. So if you go and you try to do the biography of your life, maybe you can get closer to finding that masterpiece in you. Thank you so much.